And so let's talk about the mental health spectrum and kind of how we frame mental health. When most people think about how to frame mental health, they tend to think of it from a place of like, you either don't have a problem or you have a problem. So most people think like on one side of a spectrum, you have people who are sane or don't have a diagnosis. In the middle of that spectrum, they think like, okay, these are for people with mild mental health disorders, like maybe mild anxiety disorders or mild depression. And then on the far end of that, they think, okay, that's where people with severe mental health disorders are, like bipolar disorder and schizophrenia and borderline personality disorder. And this spectrum is broken for two really big reasons. Number one, you can have a severe mental health disorder like I do and be sane at the same time. And so if you're on two places of the same spectrum at the same time, that spectrum's not working. But the more dangerous thing that this spectrum does is it promotes the idea that only people with problems need to seek help and everyone else is okay. And we do not do that with physical health. If you think about physical health, you're never going to get advice like, hey, you don't need to eat healthy until you get diabetes. Or you should never exercise until you get cancer. But if you think about the way we currently frame mental health, that's what we're doing. We're saying you're either sane or you have a problem. And it's just not working. When we view people who have bipolar disorder or who have mental health disorders as others or as someone with a problem, it stereotypes them and it judges them. And I'll never forget all of the times that I was called names and called a psycho and called crazy and made fun of because I was on this other side of the spectrum, because I was in this place of pain and hurt. And that spectrum, because it is so broken, allows us to make fun of people, to harm people, to bully people, and to dismiss them. And that's why we need a completely different spectrum and way to look at mental health. So what we really need to do is change the mental health spectrum. And that mental health spectrum should focus on balance. Balance for me is people being able to do the things that you typically do, not someone else. It's not a competition. It's not if you can balance more or take care of yourself better. It's you being able to do the things you typically do. So if we're going to change the mental health spectrum, the new spectrum would have 5 places on it. The first place would be able to balance. People who are able to balance are just people who don't have to think about their mental health much. These are people who don't have a lot of stress, they don't have a lot of trauma, they don't have a lot of triggers, they don't have a diagnosis. These are the people that I absolutely hate the most in life, but they exist, so they get a place on the spectrum. I don't actually hate you, it's just, I have some issues. The next place on the spectrum would be difficult to balance. Difficult to balance is people who are like, oh yeah, I do have stress, I do have trauma, I do have triggers, I do have like a lack of sleep, things I know I need to take care of, but they're not actively doing anything to take care of it. In a physical health world, this would be someone who's like, yeah, I know I should exercise, I know I probably shouldn't eat 6 donuts, but then there are days where you just eat the 6 donuts and don't exercise. Needing help or using help to balance is the next place on the spectrum. Using help to balance could be someone who has a diagnosis of a mental health disorder and is on medication or in therapy. But it could also just be someone who every day when you wake up, you know you need to listen to music, talk to a friend, exercise, read a book, talk to your parents, anything that helps you balance your mental health. You do not need to have a mental health disorder to help balance your mental health. Just like you don't need to wait until you have a physical health problem to take care of your physical health. The next place on the spectrum is needing constant assistance to balance. So people who need constant assistance to balance could be in a treatment program like Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous. They could be in an outpatient program for their mental health, seeing a therapist regularly every day or multiple times a week. But needing constant assistance to balance could also be someone who maybe you've already seen in your family. At some point in your life, someone in your family may have gone through something so severe that your other family members decided they needed to be around that person every day. So like they slept on their couch, they made sure they ate food, they made sure they slept, they made sure that they were taken care of for a couple days or a couple weeks until that person could be alone again. And then the last place on the spectrum is not being able to balance. And when you're unable to balance, that could be because someone is suicidal, because someone has a severe mental health disorder, but it could also just be because you went through something so severe that no matter what else you do, you can't balance your mental health. You could have had your parents get divorced, you could have went through a breakup, you could have got a bad grade, and you stay in that place on the spectrum for a couple days or a day or a week or an hour. The thing about this new mental health spectrum is that it normalizes mental health and it normalizes seeking help. I am someone who is always going to need help to balance my mental health. And that is something we should celebrate. When you see people exercising, when you see people leaving the gym, you don't think, wow, that's so weird. They're not naturally thin and strong. We tend to see people exercising and think good for them. We need to get to a place where it's the same thing for your mental health. When you are taking care of your mental health, when you're using help to balance your mental health, that should be something we celebrate, not something that we judge or label with stereotypes or dismiss. So the way you frame mental health is extremely important. We need to change it from the spectrum that most people use now, which is either you're sane or you're not, to a spectrum that focuses on balance and promotes taking care of yourself.